From the studios of the Pemberton Township Board of Education's Channel 14, it's time to find out what's cooking. Here now is the head of the Food Services Department at Pemberton Township High School and your host, Tim Paroli.
Hello, welcome to another edition of What's Cooking. I'm Tim Paroli, and today we're going to show you how, yes, you at home can make soup. Today we're going to show you how to make a cream of broccoli soup. It seems to be pretty popular. Every place I go to is selling it, and they're getting upwards of $3 to $4.50 a bowl for it. So I'd like you folks at home to learn how to prepare this pretty simple dish. It's also very healthy and good for you. All the good things about broccoli we've heard, and it's made with a cream or a milk base, so that just adds more protein and nutrients to it, and it's going to be very healthful for you also. The second soup we're going to show you is the one I want to begin with, is our barley soup. We're going to make it's a change on a beef barley soup. We're going to make it with a little hunk of venison that I've got here, but the procedure will be the same. If you don't happen to have a little bit of venison around the house, make the barley soup with a piece of beef. A leftover steak is also very good to prepare this dish. I have in front of me 2 pots of water, and the larger pot is the one I'm going to use for the barley soup. I have a smaller pot here that is boiling now, and what we're going to do with that is we're going to put some onion inside that pot, and then we're going to throw in some of the broccoli, because in order to make the broccoli soup, we want to take the broccoli and we want to cook it till it's mushy. So that takes about 5 to 8 minutes. So you got a good pot of water boiling, and we're going to take this. And remember, whenever you're cutting anything for a soup, that it's got to fit on a soup spoon. Okay? So we're going to just kind of cross-cut this onion. And as wide as I cut it, that's how we're going to go the other way now. And that will make small pieces of onion that will fit on a soup spoon, and that's what we're after. Now we're going to take and put that right into the boiling water. And we're going to add some broccoli to that. Now what I have here is some broccoli that we trimmed up, and I had this out with a salad. So a lot of people enjoy broccoli when it's raw. And the nice thing about raw broccoli, when it's fresh, it's very, very good. And in order to get the flavor and the most flavor out of the broccoli, you want to get the broccoli when it's absolutely fresh and absolutely ripe. And the broccoli should have kind of a blue color to it. And it'll be green around the edge and the side, like these are green. This one is completely green. But the little buds on it, you'll see them are just about ready to burst open, and they'll have a kind of a blue or purplish hue to them. That is when the broccoli is absolutely the best, if you're going to enjoy it with a dip like we had this. However, once it's reached that stage, the next day, it will already begin to dry and to turn a little off color. And since you've already pulled it off of the head of the broccoli, it's already beginning to dry out. Perfect broccoli for soup. So what we're going to do is just trim these up nice and small and throw them in with that onion. And that is the base for our soup. The name of the soup denotes, look at all these little buds, we're going to throw them in there. The name of the soup denotes what is going to be in it, so we're going to load this one up with broccoli. Now commercially, broccoli soup is made, we use the florets, these little buds that I'm cutting off, they'll go in the soup last, and we'll use most of the stems in with the onion, and we'll cook all the bottoms, and then they can be pureed or ground up and put in there. However, if you're making this for yourself, make it a delicacy. Use the buds that you have, put them right in the soup, because you don't want to have to try and puree this. So by cutting these small and putting them right in there, we're not going to have to puree a thing. So this is going to be a lot quicker for you to make. It's just going to be really quick. And when you try to cook the big stems down on the broccoli, the cooking time is about 40 minutes. So we've already cut this way down in half. So we got enough of them in there. I'm going to return these to the container. And now we're going to give this pot a little bit of a stir to toss them around. I'm going to bring the pot right over here so you can get a real good look at what has already happened to this broccoli. Once you put it in the heat, the ones on top here, the little dark ones, you'll see that once this gets hit by the heat, they turn a bright, bright green. They almost don't look real, it's so bright. So the color is already going to be nice and bright. You can see one that's half cooked. The color is really intensified by putting it into that boiling water. So we're going to, by using just the buds, we're going to cook them till they fall apart, and it won't take very much to do that. And the amount of water that we're using is only enough to cook that. We don't need a lot of water over that. And now I have a product here that is kind of like a bulk bouillon cube. That's all that it is. The better ones have very little salt in them. And this one, salt is about the third ingredient. This is a chicken base, and we're going to add that into our broccoli buds. And I'm going to put just 2 little pieces of that in there. If it needs more, I'm going to add it to it. The reason we're putting that in there is so that we can get that flavor into the broccoli. And now we're going to just let the broccoli cook down. And that's all that it's going to have to do. Now we're going to take some of our onion and we're going to cut these up nice and small. And we have our other pot here. I'm going to turn the fire up on that. And I'm starting this off with some water. And we're going to use our piece of meat into that. And we talked earlier on previous programs, if you've been watching us, we show you different types of cooking techniques. And today we're mostly going to be cooking in a liquid, and it's going to stay right in the liquid. So what I have here is a nice piece off of the top of a ham on a venison. And it's a nice piece of meat. You see that it doesn't have much fat on the inside. However, it's got a lot of it on the outside. This is perfect for what we want to do today. We're going to trim off all of the fat off of this piece of meat. Since we're going to boil it, if we had a piece of meat that was from the front end of the animal, it would be much tougher. But since this is not, you'll notice that once we cut through the fat on this, that the meat itself has very little flecking or marble through it. So that once it's all trimmed down, all we've got left is the meat itself without fat in it. So a piece of meat where the fat is only on the outside is one that we're looking for our soup today. And that's called a lean piece of meat. And we have all of that, and we just give that a little extra trim to get all the fat. We want every bit of that off of there that we can. And then we're going to take this and cut this into long strips. So the first piece that I have here is laying here. Now we're going to cut that into strips. And whenever you're going to be dicing anything for soup, you want to make sure that we cut them into long strips. Make all your long cuts first is what we would be teaching you. Now we're going to cut them again so that they're long, but I want them small. And I want them small so that they will cook quickly and become tender. I also want them small so that they will fit on a spoon. All right, so remember, the rule of thumb for making soups is cut everything small enough to fit on a spoon. Now I've got my long cuts made, and we're going to just cut them small. Nice little bits. All right, and as you get them cut, they go right into our pot. And this is probably the easiest one you'll make. And I find that many people at home are reluctant to try a beef soup. I mean, most of us will try a chicken noodle soup, and, you know, aside from a cream soup, this is the kind of soup that most of us are kind of afraid to try. So as I said at the top of the program, if you had a piece of steak left over, the fat is already cooked out of the steak. That's a perfect piece of meat to make this soup with. So we just cut them, flatten them out once again. Make sure we have these cut into long strips like that. And we don't want that to be, the slice is about 1/4 of an inch wide, and that's how we're going to make all the other cross cuts on that. So we just cut that now. And see, once you get better at it, you just put the whole pile together and cut right through it. All right, small enough to fit on our spoon. And into our pot that's going to go. We're going to give that a little bit of a stir, and then we're going to add to that a little bit of a base. Now we've got our little chunks, and look how quickly they've turned just from going right in there. They completely turn the minute you drop them in, and they already begin to color. The liquid is already beginning to turn color. So they turn color right away, and they impart the color right into your soup. But we're going to show you a quicker way to do that. There's some of our onion from our first soup. We get our board cleaned up. And now, just like the broccoli, we also have a beef bouillon that you could use, or a beef base. And this goes in the same way. We're going to put just a little bit of that in there. And that's going to add some more flavor. It's going to boost or bring out the flavors in our chunks of meat. Now I'm going to put some pepper into that, and that's about ready to boil. And I'm going to put a little pepper in over top of the broccoli. And give that a stir. And then what we're going to do is put in some barley. And that is going to, the barley is going to cook much like we would cook a noodle. It's very good for you. It's going to add a lot of body to this soup. And then all we're going to do, once it has come to a boil and the barley is about done, we will check it to see how it tastes. Meanwhile, our little bits of broccoli here are cooking up, and we're going to pull one out now to see if they're tender. And to see if they're just about ready, all we're going to do is pull it out while it's on the spoon from the bottom end where that stem is. We just give that a little push, and that's almost ready. So they're just about tender enough so I can pull them off the fire. And what we're going to do is make a cream base for this. So while I clean up this mess and get ready to show you how to prepare the base for these two soups, I want to get that all ready. I'd like you folks at home to watch this.
To compete, you've got to be strong. To win, you've got to be smart. Maybe you can be one of us, the few, the proud, the Marines.
Welcome back. What we have got now is a nice dark soup. The barley's beginning to cook up really nice. And the only thing that we're going to add to that soup is going to be a few mushrooms, and the mushrooms are going to cook very quickly. The other thing that we want to set up is going to be a cream sauce now for our broccoli. And before we set that up, we're going to prepare you so that you know how to roast whole birds, either chickens or what we've got today is a Cornish game hen. And the game hens are very nice if you get the smaller size. You thaw them in your refrigerator, you buy them frozen. They're nice and small. You get your own light and dark meat. You don't have to fight with anybody next to you. And they're very easy to set up. And what you want to do when you're setting up with a game hen is notice that they're a little different than chickens that we're used to seeing. The body is very short and very bulky. And when we're going to roast them, we want to pull out the giblets from the inside, tuck the legs down against the breast portion just like that, and we're going to take the wings and put the wings back behind the shoulders like that. What that is going to do is going to stabilize the body so that as we roast it, it's going to roast more evenly, because now the height of the chicken is the same throughout, and it is also going to season better. Now, as this shrinks, it's going to pop up a little bit, so just take that and give that a little press, and it'll flatten right out. Once you flatten that out, just season it with a little bit of salt and pepper. And if you want, and you're going to make sure that you want the skin to be nice and even, and you want the secret to doing that, take a little more of your pan spray and just coat the entire bird completely with the pan spray. And you'll find that what that does is make the bird brown nice and even. And we just pop that right into the oven and we roast that off. That is all there is. There's no magic secret to them. Just flatten out the body as we showed you, and we'll show you a cooked one before the program's over. What I've got now is our good heavy pot. I've got our mushed up broccoli, and we're going to start into the bottom of the pot with some butter. And we're going to put in there, if I can do that right, there we go, about 2 tablespoons of the butter in there. And we're going to melt that around. Now, the pot that you use when you're cooking anything that's got butter and flour in it, and certainly our cream sauces have that, want to make sure that your pot is very thick and very heavy, or a bimetal. A bimetal pot is one that can be aluminum with a copper bottom, or the newer ones that work just as well and are a lot easier to keep clean are the ones with an aluminum core or an aluminum bottom, and the inside will be stainless steel. If they're a little bit out of your range, what you can always settle on is a nice heavy all aluminum pot. All right, now that butter is melting, and we're going to put in enough butter and flour in there to absorb that. And we're going to just fry that a little bit. And that's the appearance you want to have in the bottom of the pot. You want to have just enough of the flour in there to take up that butter, and that's how it should look. It should have that appearance to it, and it should fry and cook. And if you're working over the pot, checking my fire to make sure it's high enough, you should be able to smell this when it changes. The temperature as it fries is going to change the odor of the flour. It's going to take on a kind of a toast-like smell to it. So after we fried that just a little bit, we stir that around, and we're going to add our milk to our thickening agent, which is that flour and that butter. Now I've put in some of the milk. I have a little more milk if I need it. But at this point, once I have that, that's called a roux, by the way, that thickener. Once that thickener is dissolved, and I've started off the bottom of the pan, and it is all mixed in completely with the milk, now we're going to take our whip, and we're going to just break up that broccoli just a little bit. And it should break very easily, just like that has. And then we're going to add that right there to our cream mixture. Now once I add that, I want to take the whip out, because if I continue to stir that with the whip, that's going to break that up. And since we put only the buds in there, we want to stir this and just let that cook very nicely, and just make sure that we've got some of the buds floating around in there. And we're going to watch the consistency of our cream soup. And we want to make sure that if it appears that it's going to get a little too thick, thicker than what we like, now we can add the rest of the milk that we held in reserve. Now, the color of the soup is going to be determined by the amount of milk that you use. Today, we have about an equal amount of milk as we did with the vegetable stock from the broccoli and the onion that we cooked together. So we have that, and just before that comes to a boil, we're going to shut that down, because that will have reached the thickness that we want. Now our barley soup, the barley is bloomed nice and large, and they're tender. The little bits of meat are tender. So what we're going to do now is add some of the mushrooms to that, because they are going to cook very quickly. Now remember that mushrooms, if you've been on a diet, mushrooms are okay to eat because the calorie content in them is very, very low. The other reason that the calorie content is very low is they're mostly water. Now the reason I'm telling you that is when people learn to cut, and they learn to cut a mushroom, what they end up doing most of the time is overcutting the mushroom. They'll cut the mushroom very, very thin. And in a soup, we don't want to do that, because these mushrooms are going to thin themselves out. So what we're doing right now is cutting these about 1/8 of an inch thick. They're just a little thicker than I'd want if they were cooked. But what we're doing, I know they're going to shrink, so we're going to put them just a little fatter than that. And we cut them right up. And now we have that, looks like a big pile of mushrooms, but believe me, that's going to go down to about 1/4 of the size once they cook. So they go right into our pot with our barley. And they'll float on top at first, and once they cook, then they will go throughout the soup, and that's when we have them and they're all ready. So don't worry that you've put them in and my goodness, they're all floating on the very top. They'll be just fine in there. So we're going to stir that, and that'll take just a moment or two to cook. And our broccoli soup now, I've just shut that off because that has reached a nice consistency and it's got a nice light color to it. So we're going to let that set there. We're going to taste that now. And now is when you would check and adjust any of your seasoning in your soup. My goodness, that's almost perfect. The only thing that this soup is missing is a little more punch to it. So what I want to do is add just a little bit more of the base to it, because I don't want to add just salt. I could add salt and bring what flavor it has up. However, by adding a little bit of this base or crumbling up a bouillon cube in there, you're adding other spices to it other than just the salt. So that's going to bring the flavor up a little more. So now you have maybe what that secret seasoning has been in a soup that you just can't put your finger on. It's because the bouillon cubes have turmeric and all kinds of other spices in such a small amount that they do change the flavor of the soup. They'll barely change the color of it, but it's going to make a difference in it. All right, I'd like to show you the Cornish game hen. I have one that I started earlier. There's our mushroom soup just about ready to show you. And when the game hens are done, easy way to tell if they're finished. And actually, these are very nice for you to practice on for carving for a whole bird. The bodies are the same. There is absolutely no difference in the construction of them. They're the same as a turkey. So making these, practicing with these, learning how to carve these will give you a lot of the bones and the carcass from this we can use for soups. So the byproduct from this is going to be very valuable to you. And if we were going to set this up, what we're going to do when you're serving something like a game hen is we want to take this and we want to remove the edible portions from it without having you, the person that's going to have to eat it, have to work too hard. Standing with the bird in front of you, you're going to split the skin between the leg and the tail on each side. Then you just follow down toward the tail and cut through. Once you've done that, you can take and just turn the bird over and just bend the leg back, and you can lift the leg right off just like that. Again, we just lift off the leg just like that. So I have both legs off, and what we do with those is we take them and we cut them right at the joint. And then we can take that and we lay them facing the opposite direction on our plate. And now you have the dark meated portion of the bird already out and on our plate and ready. Now we turn the bird back over, and down the center, or the keel bone, we're going to split to either side of that. Whatever side you go to, that's the side you're going to stay on. And we just go right on down that and follow down the outside edge of the rib cage on that. Around where you would pull out stuffing, right in there is where you cut it. You'll push a little bit on the front of the breast, and that will go right through the wishbone, and then you cut right down to where the wing joins the body, and you'll have that portion off. Cut where the wing joins the breast, and you have that separated, and that would get put on your plate like that. So now we're going to take and do the same thing on the other side. And again, remember that the structure of these is the same as a turkey or a whole chicken, a large chicken. So if you wanted to work on them and you're worried about the expense, you can pick these up when they're on special and practice with them. And what you'll have is a lot of practice with some byproduct for you to use at home. So this is how your game hen will look. And if you take a look at it, the only bones that we're looking at is the piece in the leg and the one in the wing. And that is very easy to eat, and it's very easy to portion. And we're going to show you how the soups look. Remember, we did that barley and mushroom. And we also did our cream of broccoli with all those little buds floating right to the top. When you try this at home, you're going to surprise everybody. Thank you for watching.